Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray. I'll be honest with you, and this pains me to say this, but I don't trust you. I don't think that this is necessarily a funding problem that we have for your agency as much as a leadership problem. And between the lack of transparency in hearings like this and in Intel hearings, your weaponization and politicization of issues and instruments of national security against innocent Americans and against institutions like churches, and the fact that you have held no one truly accountable for prior FISA abuses that we have all seen and recognized. I think you yourself have acknowledged that there's been abuses, and because of the fact that as the FBI director that you've stood relatively silent and passive about the biggest national security threat to our nation, that being our very open southern border, as the chairman has been discussing. I give very little credence in either your ability to do this job or, frankly, lead the brave agents below you, and I don't trust you to protect us, and that is a very difficult thing for me to say. It pains me to say that because your job is critically important to the safety of this nation and American lives, and I think because of your inability to lead and also shape the policies in the DOJ and at the White House, we are now in a more precarious position than we were I would submit than we were on September 10th of 2001. You yourself say in your written testimony that over the past year, the threats facing our nation have escalated. The breadth of these threats and challenges are as complex as any time in our history, and the consequences of not responding and countering these threats have never been greater. These are your words. And we don't only pay you to warn us of a threat, which you have eloquently done here, although that's important and appreciated that you're warning us, but we also pay you to prevent and protect us from the threats. And you're in an agency, and I'm on committees where I'm your authorizer on the Intel Committee, and I'm your appropriator here on the CJS Subcommittee on Appropriations, and I find it difficult to trust you to protect us, and any data or budget requests you bring to us as a result of that is, in my opinion, suspect. And in your nearly 20 pages of written testimony, you've mentioned the southern border only approximately 4 times, and even then you kind of gloss over it. And we now have 7 million people in our country, 350 people on the FBI terror watch list who have been apprehended, plus another 1.7 million known gotaways here within our borders as a result of your leadership's border policies. And I say your leadership and not your bosses, because your bosses are the American people, right? Your customers are the American people. You work for them. You work for the people to protect them. So your leadership, the President of the United States, AG Garland, and Director of Homeland Security Mayorkas, are literally intentionally putting the people that you work for, the average American citizen, into a clear and present danger situation that you yourself have acknowledged in your written testimony. So you've testified before the Intel Committee with the Worldwide Threats briefs and other committees that there are giant red warning lights and warning signs and lots of flashing signs from a threat and terrorism assessment perspective. You know, and it's evident that you know and agree with this notion and that we should all be concerned. Yet, despite this, you have been unable to change the policies driven by your leadership, by the President, the AG, DHS Mayorkas, and so it's difficult. But it's in addition to being untrustworthy, you are also ineffective at a very important part of your job, which is shaping the policies that do affect national security. And that should be. The open border should be the biggest challenge that your administration is recognizing right now, and unfortunately is not. And I think your biggest problem personally is that it's not just me that doesn't trust you; it's the American people that don't trust you right now as a result of that. Can I just get a simple yes or no response to this question? Does the open border policy make your job easier or harder? Are we safer or less safe as a result of the open border policy?
I have been consistent over the years, frankly, in citing my concerns about the threats that emanate from the border.
Okay.
And as to the long narrative that you went through at the beginning, needless to say, I disagree very strongly with any number of aspects of it, but I recognize that we're time limited.
I want you to acknowledge that the open border policy makes us more insecure and strong. So I want to know, what have your discussions been with the president? Have you been able to go into his office and say, boss, this open border policy is a galactically stupid policy from a national security perspective? Have you had that conversation? If so, what did that look like? What has been the response? And how are we shaping this to make us more secure in the future?
Well, I'm not going to get into specific conversations with people. I've been consistent in my message externally and internally about my concerns about the threats that are from the FBI's perspective that emanate from the border.
I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Mr. Morelli?